Well, the point, I think, is also that you have to decide if you understand architecture as an object or as a space. And understanding it is a space is working with elements, with b-dimensional elements that work then in an idea of space, and they leave the center for the object. So there's nothing that is overloading the situation. And this is one principle that makes also something very clear, the matter of reception. And if it's a topic of a museum, or if it's a topic of an existing structure, this kind of reception was always a major key for us to enter in our work. What I would like to show you are two projects. It's the very first project that we have done, and the second one is the current project. So in between, you have to imagine that something happened. So what you see here is a site in the historic center of Vienna, which was to become a foundation, the Generali Fund, called the Generali Foundation. The Generali Foundation is a big collection of contemporary art, mainly of the 60s, 70s. They have the biggest Gordon Arthur Clarke collection. They have really one of the most profound collections of these periods, and they needed a storage, they needed a display, they needed a little museum or a little hall for exhibitions. Where we are is a structure that I show you now in the very beginning out of the Biedermeier, and you see maybe here, here we are. You see these little gardens and you see these handkerchiefs. You see, by the way, just to mention, the first big social housing in Vienna coming from the Baroque. That's another story where the whole Viennese intelligence was living outside from the city walls where Mozart did his first time, the Zauberflöte, Beethoven was playing. So it's a quite loaded up area, but this area changes as the city grows, and it changes also the directions. And directions will say that you have this kind of triangular piece of land, and this triangular piece of land is the rest of speculation between Biedermeier and Centriture. It takes up in this zone a hat factory. It was one of the most famous hat factories that existed in the world, called Harbig, and they had one of the main productions in this triangle. Hats came out of fashion. If you look at all soccer games, everybody throws up the hat if there's a goal. These times are over, and mentioning today Tchaikovsky, this is the scene, the setting that we came to know. And in the very beginning, the director wanted to keep it as it is, the classic concrete floor inside, leave these beautiful iron casted columns, but we didn't like this idea at all, because this kind of romanticism is not fulfilling that, what we call reception. The object of construction is in the center, it's blocking a situation, it is to be disloaded. Disloaded will say that you make an analysis of what you can tear out from this building. And this is quite clear that you end up in a situation where you are clear about the values, you eliminate them, and then you have to work in this strange shaped space that doesn't represent at all the idea of a classic, of a very classic exhibition hall. So the more you put in, the worse it gets, and so we decided to work only with one big linear element that fulfills various functions. The first function is it divides the space into two other spaces, shielding off these angles in the back that you don't want to see at all when you enter, these little things. On the other hand, it is dividing two spaces of different illumination, and it is negotiating the new structure of the roof with the structure below of a garage that is then below added with a huge storage that is the same size of the museum. You can hang things on it on the wall, you can walk around, and something to be mentioned now, you enter into the structure from the street following a corridor, and you end up below a warehouse. Oh no. And you enter below a warehouse, that goes too much. You see too much, you see too much. You enter below.
Go back one, just to the existing situation.
That's it.
Yeah. So you were showing what you took out.
Yes, we took out those walls that are really not of a historic value. We eliminated them, and the main thing was the building in here was supposed to be knocked down. And today, talking about one project, I offered a method that we did as well, because we thought that it would be more convenient to bring up a new structure, the structure that shortens the beams, so that you're able to take the new weights. And by bringing in this structure, you also have a new access, you have a new service system, and the spaces are disloaded from other functions. So what you see here is the concrete structure that is going up. In order to shorten these elements, the new staircases are inserted following the new functional use of the building. And of course, all these services are shielded off from the exhibition spaces themselves. Now to return into the return to the section, you see very well how this warehouse is kept. You have the big exhibition hall with a quite simple roof construction above, and you have the big storage below. And here you have the underground, just to give you an idea how close this is and how particular it was to construct on this site. The whole thing is in a sunken garden inside. The garden occurs to be the garden in front of our studio, so you have to imagine the first bigger job that we did was just around the corner. And this was a funny coincidence that I understood as something completely natural. These things happen if you have an office, you just build a museum right next door. But I learned life is a little bit more complicated. Well, this is also something that I like to show to give you an idea that architecture also has a little bit of real dirt, cement, everything around, and it's quite rough. It's not only black lines which establish your project, it's a little bit more than that. Just to repeat now in the model what we did. We eliminated the structure, we inserted with concrete those elements that are visible as a new intervention, and you see the structure going up and the structure in the hall. Then the brise-soleil in order to keep out the sun load from the south, and that's the way how you enter. So you're coming in from the street, you have a complete different light situation, sound situation, you get adapted to something completely new in order to enter below the warehouse. And the strategy behind it is also an idea of reception, the aspect that I was talking before, also in the sense that you're looking from a dim situation into an illuminated situation. And this has something to do with reception. You see the things much more clear, and we know that it's the same situation in a sense as we have it here, as we know it from a theater. And this is a trick that we love to use. And then you enter into this big hall. And I was talking about bidimensional elements that become then spatial. And this is the one linear element I was talking about. And you will notice that it's precisely shaped, so there's nothing glued to the beam. The beam is distacked, and you can read these lines without bigger problems. This is first important because, as mentioned also yesterday, it's always the unresolved things that pull the attention, and you won't find any plugs or things in the floor. This is something that every director of a museum hates, and so we decided to make all this disappear in the roof construction. So you have the beams carrying the whole ventilation, and between them the big fields that we developed in location of this museum, because we didn't like these little grids running around on the ceiling, and so we decided to go on big sizes. Think it big, 6 meters for 2.40 meters, and we found a kind of plastic foil that we wrapped around the frame. And so this gives now, you don't see any construction. The things that you see, these little lines are a shadow. The frame has 2 millimeters of stainless steel, of aluminium, where the thing is pulled around, the foil. And you can open it, you get to all the infrastructure that is below. And we liked this solution very much. It was an invention that we did, and then one day the telephone was ringing in our office studio, Jean-Noël. And I just answered something like, Zumto is not at home, and I put down the telephone. They called again, and it turned out that they were very interested about the solution. And after a long negotiation, just to be mentioned as a consultant, what they never did, in fact, they rented the hall, they bought everything in order to get into the roof, to understand how this works. And then they came again, the fifth time, very proudly to Vienna, and there was one collaborator, and she threw the plans on the table and she said, you know your details. And my partner Christian said very simply, and that's why you come to Vienna. Well, it doesn't really work. It's always looking like this, what did you do? And so what they did not understand, that if you have a frame and if you put some textile on it, you have to make it like an overspan, you say so, and then it's pulled together. So 5 delegations were thinking coming to Vienna in order to understand how it works, and things can work very simple if you think a little bit more profound.
To steal your recipe.
Yes, I mean, I don't worry if they steal a recipe. I mean, it's a solution, and if this is improves another situation, that's okay. I mean, you can talk about this very simply. And now it's a patent of another Austrian firm called Zumtobel. But let's forget this, it was a little story in between. Here you see how the thing is set up. You don't see a frame, it's really maximum light coming in. It has a light transparency of 97%, which is great, and works also with artificial light in the same situation as with daylight. That's it. Everything is shielded off, also in the roof, so you don't see the construction, you don't see all these elements where the background could become the foreground, so everything is backstage. It's like in a car. You have the things, you have the engine below, and sometimes it's necessary not to see it. The way around the wall I've been talking about, with a view below the warhouse, to give you also an idea of the various moments of light intensity, and then the very classic shaped room, one that was left, where you can see quite precisely how this suspended ceiling works. On these peripheric parts, always with the whole climatization of the space. It works in different conditions with the collection, as you see here. Also partly with moving images and daylight, or completely closed with the brise-soleils, and in this sense you can illuminate completely the daylight. It works. This is the mentioned Gordon Matter Clark collection of his drawings, of his reliefs. And when you go out, you have this view of a unit of reflection, of a unit of light, and it gives you quite a nice idea. But when you get closer, you simply understand they're two complete opposite materials who have the same adjective of reflecting light, but by the moment where they come close to each other, it's very precise where the old starts and the new, or where the old ends and the new starts, put it that way. So this was a project that we did in 1992. This was the starter, or the starting moment of our office. And now I would like to switch to another one, which is a monastery. A monastery in the north of Austria run by the Benedictines, and it has an origin. And the origin is medieval. It was destroyed in the 30th war completely. And later on, the Baroque architect Mungenost set on the old medieval structure his new monastery. Medieval, we say, it looked in the very beginning like this, and in the middle you see this little chapel, an argument where we return to later on. And he was using in a very economic way these destroyed base foundations in order to set up a new monastery. So you see, you have this very straight, long prospect of 125 meters, and in the back you have a sequence of courtyards, which in the language are referring to the Baroque, but in the substance they are medieval. The black thing coming out is the so-called altane. This is a piece that you see here quite well up there. And this makes still part of the medieval fortification of the convent. And it was filled up by Mungenost with earth in order to stabilize it and to put on this edge, the prospect of the long one that you see in the beginning. The problem is that the walls started to move, so you had to dislode the whole situation, take out the earth. And below that there were the archaeological findings of the medieval monastery. So this was the competition where we entered, and we acted as we always do. You see this sequence here. This was the apartment of the conductor of the orchestra of the convent, and we decided that these interventions that happened there are not really in proportion to that what the place is, and we took them immediately out and kept the situation as it was in its origin. This means also that you have an access into this area, and you have a way down to the excavations below, and you can go out on a space that is called Altane. It's nothing else than a belvedere where you look down into a valley for about 20-30 kilometers. And in the same sense, this intervention is also something where you can walk, where you can cover the archaeological findings below, and it's connecting different zones of cultural use. So the whole beam is full with a library, with exhibition spaces, and this would become the entrance for all of these sections. Now going down, we have these excavations of the monks' cells, and the story was also to insert a kind of construction that is not touching archaeology, but that is also able to take the load of a bus that is delivering things for an orchestra on this belvedere. Just to go further on. In section, you see what this means. It's this long prospect up the belvedere, then you have the first level of excavations, then you have the staircase downstairs, we have the second level, which is now currently the area where we are working, and then you go the way up back to the top. This is the area I mentioned, which is now under construction, where you see also these things here, which were entered later on in order to stabilize the whole situation. And all these elements were able now to tear out as we took the load of the existing weight away that was located in the floor above. To give you an idea how the thing is located in this hilly situation, there's the rock below. And now it's very precise again to read it in the model. You have this entrance situation, and I was talking about this little chapel before, and then you have your way through the excavations. You can link yourself up here to the other parts of the monastery. You can take the staircase in order to have your way back and to be out again. So it's quite simple. That's the altane on the top. And that's the way how the whole thing is situated into the medieval structure. What you see here quite well are the beams. What we did is we wanted to save height as far as we could. So the beam is exactly following in its proportion the need of the weight. So they are also getting smaller on the end, and they are getting, there we don't have the high moment, also more simple, and they are more low, and they become a slab with a concrete connection with, I will show it in, my English is not so precise in technical terms. You see it here much better. You have this technique, you have this slab that works like a T with the beams that are then hooked really back into the granite, where we have the spins that we bring down into the rock. On the top you have daylight coming into the situation with a system of brise solaire, and in this sense it's not only the way to bring in the light, it's not only the way to shield off the sun, it's also a fence so that you don't fall down into this valley. Seen from the back, you see how it's hooked back to the rocks, and it's a slab that is not touching at all with a constructive element. That what are the archaeological findings. That's the way it looks like in reality. So when you're down there, you have a view on the baroque on the one side through this glazing, and on the other side you have the light coming in to the exhibition spaces. On this picture I would like to also say something. The Benedictines there are very strict and they have no money. They have some prisoners who are there, and they have big woods. So with the prisoners together, we've built that more or less. And we set up this woodwork as a brise soleil. So we worked with the things that were available, but we tried to organize them according to the real need. This is the apartment, or used to be the apartment of the conductor. And the reason I show you that is referring to the image of the little chapel before. The chapel was overformed by the Baroque, and you see up there this opening. My partner Christian went up there with the ladder, and he opened it just to see if there's a static connection between Baroque and the medieval. And Mungenost was smart enough just to cover it and not to hook it in a static sense together. So it was clear for us that we can take this off, and this is the result. Why we did that, it was the request of the Bundesdenkmalamt, now I need the help, the ones that are protecting the buildings, and however, they wanted to see the whole story in one moment of the monastery. So when you enter into this building, you see immediately the medieval, the Baroque, and this is a kind of didactic restoration that we had to follow, and this is now the result, how you get down, how you see the foundations of this little chapel I was talking about, and from there you take your way into the excavations in order to follow, guided with daylight, down to the surfaces that we are now restoring, or to take with this bridge your way into the archaeological findings. You see the rock I was talking about, it's a beautiful piece. If it's getting October, November, it's wet, it's sweating, water is coming down. And this is a presence that we appreciate very much. So that's the bridge bringing us over to the zone of the archaeological findings. The beams I was talking about, optimized from the structure in order to save space, to gain height, and to have a structure that follows a certain intelligence and not that what is available on the building market. I talked about the bridge and the necessity of firemen, ambulances, everything to arrive there in case something happens. So we had to make a little bridge over the chapel that I showed you before. And it's also concrete work that is making a ring all around. You see it here quite well. It's a ring that is stabilizing also the wall, and in the same way it's taking the beams, and that can be located in this context quite well. Yeah, that's now the situation if you come out from the big library. And we were talking the last days about horizons, and this is something that I would like to add to this discussion. And we love this place very much, but the church is a very delicate client because they think in complete different terms of time as we architects do. They are more in the terms of eternity, and I guess this project will follow us within the next 20 years, step by step. And so this is the actual one we're working on. The other one is from 1992. Thanks very much for your attention. That's it.